Now, we need to review basic features. So after you have constructed a sketch similar to this one, or whatever your part sketch looks like, you need to go to the Features tab. So before we begin, if you look on the left side, there's a Sketch option here. Whenever we start to add features, the rest of the features will be added under this. So just keep that in mind. Now, there's a few different options. There isn't many initially, but the features include an extruded boss slash base, a revolved boss slash base, and then swept, lofted, and boundary. Really, we're only going to review extruded for right now, but revolve does the same thing, except it revolves it kind of around an axis. Uh, so if we just select extruded base, you can select a few different things. So you can select a line, and see if we select this, and we rotate around it a little bit, it shows the entire, it makes thick the entire sketch, and we don't want that in this case. This is going to be a little sprocket piece, and what the sprocket piece does is it holds a gear or a sprocket with a chain onto a drive shaft. So, selected contours. So what a contour is, it's just kind of like a surface. And see what we're doing here whenever we're selecting over this, see the red? That should negate it, or so it should ignore that. So now that we selected that, see now it has a hole in the middle. But this still isn't quite what I'm looking for right now, because I want to make this center area here longer to fit on the pipe shaft. So if I just select this other portion, it just makes this ring. And we're just going to make this a 1/4 inch thick. This would probably be a lathe piece, uh, but that's more manufacturing side. So now we have this. It says it's a 1/4 inch thick, and we have this outline here in the center. So if we just hit the OK mark, we're left with this. So after we click off of it, the sketch disappears. The sketch disappears because it's under this feature here. And so this part isn't done yet. Right now it's just a washer. So what we can also do, we can go back into the sketch, right click it, and hit show. What that will do is it'll just show it in our viewport. So what we need to do now is create the little flange part that goes onto pipe. So we need to go to extruded boss slash base again, and this time select the outside one. And as you can see again, it highlights the entire section, and we don't want that. So if we just go back to contour, and you have to select over here on the contours, hit the red part that we want to not extrude out, and we can either change the dimension on the left side here, or we can just drag our little thing. So let's just say we want it to be 2 inches. I couldn't get it quite right over there, so we just do 2 inches. All right. So there's a few different settings in this section. On the left side here, there's blind, through all, up to vertex, up to surface, offset, up to body, midplane, stuff like that. So usually you do use blind, but in the case where you don't know a dimension, you might want to do up to surface. And see, in this case, there's no surfaces out here, so it doesn't really know what to do. But over here on the left side, um, it's selected. It allows you to select a surface later. So if say the surface was this top piece, it would automatically do that. But in this case, we don't want that. Um, and we'll go over this in one of the next few tutorials. But if you right click, you can edit the feature again to change the settings. And so since we did not want the surface, um, we can select other ones. So usually blind is what you want to use, 2 inches, and then merge result. This is important. Sometimes you want pieces to be all one piece. So if I merge this result, this is one full piece. I'm going to hide the sketch here, but this is one full piece. So whenever you export a file, it's going to be one full piece. However, if I go back, edit, and then if I say it does not want to be merged with what's already there, well, now it's sort of two pieces. And so you can move this, you should be able to. Yeah, you can move it, but usually you don't want to. So right now what we've done is we've created this little flange here, and it's we're going to remerge it because that's what we want, because it's one solid piece and it's easier for programs later on to read. Merge result. Now we have one solid piece. Now, so there's a few other options. Now that we have a solid body, there's a few other options we have access to. Extruded cut, hole wizard, revolved cut, other types of cuts, a fillet, and chamfer, a few different pattern types, ribs, drafts, and other stuff like that. And mirror, which will go later. Um, Extruded cut, we can actually, if we have another sketch, I'll make one real quick, say here, and we just say we draw a little circle here. I won't dimension this thing uh, for the sake of time. But if we go here, we can go extruded cut, select this surface, and it will cut through a body that we have. So here's another pretty good time to show you uh, the other settings on cut. So when we're cutting, um, obviously it's going from the sketch we made through the part and just deleting it, removing material from it. So blind is just a distance. This is often done with like holes, but that we'll get to that later in just a few seconds. But you can also do up to next. And up to next is up to the next surface of your part. So as you can see, where the white or the yellow is, that's where it's going to stop cutting, just like that. So there's a hole just like that. I'll delete it here in a second, but that's what the cut does. You'll probably also use that a lot. Um, it's one of the main tools in SolidWorks. So when you delete, ask if you want to delete the entire thing. Usually this isn't that big of a deal, so you just hit yes. It won't delete the sketch, so we'll delete the sketch too, and we'll go from there. And right now I want to show the original sketch again, because if you look closely, there's these points here that I made there for a reason. What that reason is so I can use the hole wizard. So this piece would usually have holes in it, and I'm going to add holes in just a second. If we go here, we go to hole wizard. There's a whole bunch of different settings, and you can get very specific with it because this is a great tool to use. But there's a few different hole types. There's counter bore, countersink, simple, or hole, and it should be simple hole, or straight tap, and stuff like that. Uh, Tapered tap. There's a lot of different settings, and there's like legacy hole. I believe that's more of a custom, and then there's counter bore, slots, countersink slots, and just regular slots. So let's say this time I just want a simple hole, a straight through hole. So there's a whole bunch of different standards. Usually ANSI is what you use. All drill sizes generally works in machine shops. Sometimes you'll use dowels, and so there's dowel sizes specifically. Um, but in this case, we'll just use all drill sizes. And so what I want to do is I want to take a 1/4 inch, no, let's go 3/8 of an inch hole through each of these parts. And so there's a whole bunch of different number sizes, but every so often there's actual like numbered sizes, I guess you could say, like fractional sizes. So if we just keep scrolling, um, eventually you get up to like 5/64, and this here eventually is a 1/4. But like I said, I wanted 3/8, and you just keep scrolling. So 3/8 is somewhere around here, right here. Select 3/8, and there's an end condition. So sometimes your part is thick enough to where you don't want it to go all the way through, so you can select blind and you can how long do you want your hole to be. But in this case, we want a through wall. Usually these sections or these options here, they don't get changed because they're pretty standard. You can do different call out values, which is in um, a machinist documentation. I usually just leave those the same. And now we can go to positions up here. So it's asking us to select the face, hole, or slot position. Um, so we should be able to select this face. And as you can see, we selected the back face, or the face that our sketch was made on. And it's apparent that our holes can be lined up exactly with these points that I put on the surface. And that's why points are very useful in sketches. A lot of people ignore them and they will add these holes just like willy-nilly and then dimension them after. It's a lot easier to add points to your sketch initially, and then whenever you're doing this, add it in later. So as you can see, we are fully defined down here in the bottom right, which means the second we hit this check mark, everything's going to be fine. So in this case, we have just made a flange, a sprocket flange. So the pipe would go in here, holes would be there, holes would be bolted through, and it would spin. Obviously, there's going to be a hole coming down here, and I will show you how to do that in just a second. But ignore these little like tolerance bits to initially get the screw in or bolt in. Those don't matter too much. The person who's machining the part, especially if it's you, um, knows that sometimes that's there and sometimes it's not. Um, so, so now we're going to make, uh, if it would let me, now we're going to make the hole through the center there. All right. So, really quick, this is easiest when you have your planes like this right plane, when this is showing. So as you can see, the middle of our part is through this. So what I'm going to want to do, and I've rotated around this part many times, and it doesn't really matter which way you do it. I'm going to put a hole straight down through this extrusion shaft. So we're going to do that by, first off, creating, we're just going to go back to the hole wizard. We're going to regular drill. Um, and this time I want to go a little bit less of a size, just say 1/4 inch. It doesn't really matter too much, but when you're actually making a part, it does. It says through all, and we're going to select positions. And so we can select this face. And what it is doing, as you can see, if you look very closely, it's rotating with whatever orientation on the cylinder we are. So I can select here, and it puts a kind of cattywampus, if you will, um, hole in there. And while this is technically okay, it's not very optimal. So, like I said, it is difficult to do because it's hard to get it all centered on here. So I'm actually going to back out of this and instead create um, just a hole. So what this is going to do is I'm going to create a sketch on this plane. Going to just make a circle. Boom. So 0.25. And whenever you enter it down here in the bottom left on parameters, sometimes it doesn't make it official, if that makes sense. You have to go back to with Smart Dimension and actually input it. 0.25. All right. So now that's there. technically it is in the center, but if I'm not careful, I'm able to move this around because it's underdefined in the bottom right. So we're going to add relation. We're going to select that point and the origin point. We're going to make them vertical. Hit the check mark. So now it should only be able to move up and down. So now what we need to smart dimension. Select that point and this point again. And unlike the last video, for some reason, it's not popping up with the actual dimensions. But I'm just going to make it 1.25 inches from the edge. Okay. Just like that, we have a sketch. We have to exit sketch too. We have a little circle and the middle plane of our sprocket. So what we're going to do is go back to features, extruded cut, and it automatically puts it one way. What if you want it to go both? So on the left side, we have it up to next. Direction 1 is up to next. And you can also have a direction 2. So if we just select direction 2, it does the same thing. We can go up to next, and then it has a nice hole all the way through. So that concludes the basic features, such as the extrude and cut and hole wizard as well. Revolved, both the cut and the extrude features, essentially you could make this part with a cross section and then revolve it like that. But many times it's easier just to build it like this. A fillet, I'll show you how to do that real quick. You just select a face, and oftentimes the manufacturing team will have you do this because their tools can't make sharp edges like this. And also, you do not want sharp edges like this due to concentration gradients, which make your part fail, potentially fail. Makes it more likely for a brittle fracture to happen. So, as you can see, we can just hit the check mark, and it makes a fillet for us. So, like I said, we can go back and change that really quick. 0.1, check, and that looks a little better. So, that's how you use the fillet. The chamfer is very similar, except it's a flat edge, not a kind of curve.